You've been listening to Lise Maisonneuve, the Commissioner of the Future of Sport in Canada Commission, offering her preliminary report into sport abuse in this country and 71 recommendations aimed at enhancing safe sport, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But she said that the Canadian sports system is in crisis and now broken, that there is a lack of protection for children and abuse and maltreatment at all levels right across the country. The CBC's Hilary Johnstone has been following along and joins me now. And so, Hilary, quite a damning report from the Commissioner.
Quite a damning report, very, very strong language that she used. And I think it's probably helpful here if we talk a little bit about what her mandate was and then what it was we just heard from her. So Commissioner Lise Maisonneuve had a very broad mandate. This was not just looking at sports in Canada at the federally funded level. This was about looking at sports and the sporting organizations in this country on a whole. So she was looking at how to improve the sports system right across the country, also at the provincial, the territorial, and the club level as well. What are we talking about here when she talks about abuse and maltreatment? Well, that is also wide-ranging. So she looked at a number of things, including physical punishment, bullying, body shaming, sexual exploitation, abuse of power imbalances, failure to meet basic needs, racism, sexism, and homophobia. And she identified a number of things that she thinks is leading to some of these allegations that we have heard in recent years. And you heard her say there that she went to some 13 cities across 9 provinces and territories, that a lot of the information she has gathered were first-hand accounts from athletes, from young people as well, about what they have experienced as they have gone through Canada's sports system over the years. So a lot of this came to light after the 2022 Olympic Games in Beijing. In some cases, people have been submitting complaints and information online, in some cases speaking with the Commissioner here and her team. A number of things, including what she described as a leadership vacuum. Also talked about a funding crisis. So much of the funding for sports in this country has not gone up since 2005. So that is 20 years ago now. Talked about fragmented structure, that there isn't some sort of centralized organization in this country that oversees sports and makes sure that everyone is complying with the various rules that they'd like to see in place. She also talked about this focus on high performance. So seeing athletes as commodities rather than thinking about them as people, in some cases even children as well. So she talked about that. In terms of what she would like to see, she said that there needs to be more of a focus on prevention rather than just reacting once there is a complaint. She'd like to see standardized background checks. She also talked about the need for a national registry so that if there are individuals who are identified as maybe being a bad actor, someone who should not be part of sports in this country, that is more centralized and at a national level so that people can find those names, for example. So along with addressing the funding problems, she also talked about mandating governance structures and making sure that funding is dependent on following rules that are set out, following those standards, along with that what we were just talking about, the public registry and need for more funding as well. So a broad mandate. Whether or not any of this is adopted, of course, Andrew, is still something that remains to be seen. That's an open question. And this is, of course, just a preliminary report at this point. Her full report is expected at some point next year.
Hilary, thank you. The CBC's Hilary Johnstone. Amelia Cline was listening to that briefing. She has also started going through the Commission's report. Amelia is a lawyer and a former elite gymnast. She is also the managing director of Athletes Empowered. It's an organization dedicated to fostering a safe and supportive environment for athletes. Amelia, appreciate you taking the time. I know you're probably eager to go through almost the 400 pages, but before you get to do that, just tell me, how were you reacting as you were listening to the Commissioner?
Well, it was quite emotional. It's the culmination of years, if not decades, of work by brave survivors who have just relentlessly continued to come forward, even in the face of so much resistance from the sports system to change. To hear that summary of how broken our system is. It hits all the points that we have been discussing and trying to get government to take action on. So it was quite powerful to hear that.
What did you make of the recommendations?
I think they're an excellent start. They do incorporate a lot of the things that advocates and survivors have been recommending throughout all of these processes. We have a fractured system, and that has contributed in large part to the crisis that we see of abuse in sport. And so the recommendations for centralizing this system is quite key. The recognition that abuse and maltreatment is happening at all levels of sport, that we need to stop emphasizing elite sport, and we need to start focusing our resources down to the grassroots. Those things are so critical and actually are potential mechanisms to see meaningful change.
Can you tell us a little bit about the abuse you suffered and its impact on you?
Yeah, of course. I was an elite gymnast from the time I was about 2 years old until I was about 14. And for the last few years of my gymnastics career, I had a pair of abusive coaches who subjected us to all forms of emotional and physical abuse, weighing, fat shaming, name calling, yelling, as well as just very unsafe training environments where myself and my teammates suffered significant injuries, often directly at the hands of our coaches. And unfortunately, we know that experience, even though my experience was 20 years ago, those experiences continue to be perpetuated throughout gyms and skating rinks and other sport environments right throughout this country. So again, it was validating to hear that the recognition that this is a widespread problem. This is not just a few bad apples. This isn't just a few unlucky athletes who experience these things. This is ubiquitous, and it's something that deserves urgent attention.
Are you optimistic that some of these recommendations will actually be implemented?
That's going to be the key question. Having this report is significant. Having the public awareness around these issues does help to provide the pressure that government is going to need to actually implement these recommendations. And it's really going to take government being motivated to implement these things to see these recommendations implemented. So I think that's going to be the key question, and it's going to take everyone in this country continuing to place the pressure where it needs to go.
Is there one or a couple of recommendations or areas where you think the government should really focus on first?
I think the idea of a centralized complaints mechanism and tribunal is really, really key. What we're seeing is that people who suffer from abuse or maltreatment in sport are met with this hodgepodge, fractured system of complaint mechanisms right now. And it makes it almost impossible for them to navigate. And we're not seeing sanctions and disciplinary action taken in the way that they should be, in large part because of that fractured system. So if I could implore government to focus their attention, it would be on creating that mechanism on an urgent basis so that we can actually start seeing accountability and consequences for perpetrators of abuse in this system.
You speak to athletes as a former elite athlete yourself and as an advocate. Do those who have reached the pinnacle have concerns about what it took to get there? Do many of them say it just wasn't worth it?
Yes, sadly, even with so much of our resources devoted to elite sport, Olympic sport results, if you speak to many of the people who reach that level, which is already such a rarity, many will say the experience that it took to get there left them broken. And many will also say that once they retire, they feel like they were discarded by the system because they no longer had value. Again, speaking to the point that we heard from the commissioner today of athletes feeling like they're commodities, which is really how we characterize them currently in our current system. So I think it's important that abuse is happening at every level, and even those who achieve the incredible success that we hope for all of our athletes, they're leaving this system damaged, broken, and in need of support. And so we really need to take a very hard look at our entire system and say, really, winning at all costs is not worth it. need to change how we deliver sport in this country.
Maybe this is a first step to fixing that broken system. We'll see. Amelia, appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Thank you, Amelia Cline of Athletes Empowered in Vancouver.